One of the dates I went on in high school, we went to go see a movie, and we walk out of the movie theater, and I see my 1993 Chevy Lumina out there, and a police car and another car were out there. And I was really confused, and it turns out a teenager who just had got their license the day before had their foot slip off the brake, and they rammed into the side of my car. And talk about being in the right place at the right time, right? Another date I went on in college. For some reason, I took her ice skating, and usually, if a guy tries to create this, plan, and he might make himself look good and skilled and awesome to impress the girl, and that makes sense, right? Well, I didn't do this very well, apparently, because I went ice skating with her, and 5-year-olds were skating around me with like Paw Patrol hats on, and fell on my butt several times, and it just didn't make me look good, but it was still a good time. Dating can bring the best and the worst out of people, and it's a really confusing process. It's a really weird process for many people, and it's hard to define, and that's what I want to talk about today. Hello, my name is Luke Jackson. I'm one of the ministers at Albany Church of Christ, and this is the fourth episode of the series Roles We Play. In this series, we dive into a few different roles or hats that we play to learn more about ourselves and to learn more about God. And today I'd like to speak with you a little bit about dating. And like I was getting at earlier, dating can bring out the worst or the best in us. And if you think about it, who actually are we dating if we date a person? For an hour, we sit with somebody and get to know them. And as we meet someone, what self of this person are we meeting? Are we meeting someone's best self? Are we meeting someone's most embarrassing self, maybe? It's really confusing sometimes and hard to evaluate. And think about it even further if you date somebody online, or most of your relationship occurs online. Research shows that it's quite frequent nowadays for younger people to meet their romantic partners online. And if you are just getting to know someone on a screen, they can manufacture that image. They can type to make them sound a certain way, and it can be really, really stressful in these times. Even talking about dating a little bit brings up past stressors from my life at that time, and it's wild. And we also know, as we think about this, that young people hit puberty earlier these days and now get married even later. So this phase of dating and singleness can last even longer now, and it can be stressful, like we've been saying. And right now, we also unfortunately know how high the divorce rate is, but at the same time, we also know how highly God views marriage. So as you can tell, I'm trying to create a frame, but to create an importance, a significance to talk about this, and for Christians to develop more of a narrative in the conversation of dating. And so today I'd like to initiate a conversation about what the ideal role of dating could look like for the Christian and follower of Christ, and then a few things that can kind of get in the way from this, from honoring God with this season. And I'd also like to give a quick shout out to an awesome resource I found recently called Single, Dating, Engaged, and Married by Ben Stewart. This is an awesome book. I'd recommend it for anybody in any of these seasons. It's been enlightening to work through it myself, and a lot of some of the talks I've been working through have been informed by this text, and I appreciate it. So anyways, let's get started. So what is dating in the eyes of God? How should a Christian go about dating, being a boyfriend, girlfriend, talking to someone? I can recall when I was younger, wishing that there was a specific passage that the Bible would just go to. That in 1 Peter, it says how Peter went on a date with a girl, and he took her to the Sea of Galilee, and they didn't kiss until the third date, and they held hands here, and he said this. The Bible just doesn't address this in the way that a lot of us would like to. It doesn't give us a step-by-step play. And on top of that, though, in our culture, it's a little bit confusing. The terminology changes, and when, as I think back to my own experience, I'd be in the talking phase or getting to know someone without any sort of status or being called boyfriend. We were just kind of talking. And if I'm remembering correctly, when you're in this status, you don't go out on official dates. You're not official yet. You're just kind of in that weighing, evaluating field, I guess. But then if you do enjoy talking to this person, and it continues, the other person is getting stuff out of it, then maybe the next step would be asking this person to be your boyfriend or girlfriend. And of course, now with my wife, with my now wife, I eventually asked her after that to if she would marry me. She said yes. Then we were engaged for 9 months, and then we got married. But as I think back about the earlier parts of the process, it can be really confusing, and even some of it can be even contradictory. If you actually take a step back and think about, what is this process that our culture, our recent modern culture has created for dating? As I think about it, a few questions pop up, like what is the point of, or what is the reason that we actually call someone our boyfriend or girlfriend? What actually distinguishes this from the talking phase? It's an odd and in-between concept because it's many people view being someone's boyfriend or girlfriend as a higher level of commitment, and yet it's not the full responsibility of being married yet. So it's this kind of in-between spot. And yet, if you aren't engaged to be married, doesn't it make sense that you should have more freedom and less responsibility in this phase? Another question that I'm thinking about is many people may respond differently across the board with this, and these are things that you may have to figure out for yourself. But what rights, privileges, or expectations do you give someone who is now your boyfriend or girlfriend? Does this status give you the right to access your boyfriend or girlfriend's body, their schedule? Does this mean that you need to consider them as you decide what career, what school, what location you want to live in? And how much time do you have to spend with each other? Is it okay to go hang out with friends for a whole weekend? Or do you need to update this person? How often do you have to update them? If I don't text them this many times this week, is that okay? It gets really gray. And like I said, the Bible doesn't lay this out, of course, for us. It doesn't give us a step-by-step play. But consider this. What if dating wasn't meant to be a status to sit in? What if it really were just a process to move through instead of a status just to be comfortable and sit in? Ben Stewart in his book uses this terminology, and he treats it with pretty good balance. He doesn't sit around and trash the modern concept, the modern process of dating, but he does instead give some principles that the Bible does speak about it concerning evaluating relationships and evaluating people. So he describes dating as a process to move through, a process of evaluating if this is someone I want to, in the end, commit to financially, commit to legally, commit to emotionally, physically, and spiritually for the rest of my life. That this dating is a process of evaluating this important person. And as we continue to ponder this potentially new frame for conceptualizing dating, for Christians, I think it may be valuable to speak about what makes this dating process murky, what makes it difficult, or what could mess it up. So I want to go through a few factors that could mess up dating for the Christian now. The first one is making it a relationship about consuming instead of serving. And as I was getting at earlier, some of us view this dating phase as having some of the privileges of marriage, so some of the good things, but then not being fully responsible and fully committed just yet. Genesis 2:24 says, "Therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh." So what it doesn't say is that if you've been dating for someone over a year, then you can become one flesh. Or if you consider yourself serious, then you can become one flesh. If you are Facebook official, you can become one flesh. It doesn't say those things. It says when you hold fast to your wife, your husband. This person that I'm dating is not mine, and I am not theirs until we are married. The covenant hasn't been enacted yet. So therefore, there are parts of myself that I have not yet given to this person that I'm dating. And immediately your mind may think when I say that to sex, that the Bible says that sex is designed for marriage. Well, yes, but this is not the only part of yourself that you can give to someone, is it? Financially, I would assume that, if you get into a dating relationship, getting a joint bank account immediately after the third date would be a bad idea. Legally, you're not going to connect yourself to this person legally by law. Emotionally, and this one's a bit gray, but as you date someone, you of course would connect with this person emotionally. You'd share feelings, emotions, and dreams together, and this is a good thing. That being said, I've spoken with people who, as they look on their dating phase, they regret putting all of their emotional stock, their entire investment of their emotional bank account into someone that they were dating too soon, and then they got burned. This is one of the things that can make breakups really messy, even between two good people. So if we quickly depend on someone to give us and fulfill us in every way, and if we slowly stop investing in others, like our friends, our family, and church, then if we put all of our eggs into this one basket, this person we're dating, then we can enter into some dangerous waters. And I would especially encourage my teens to be careful with this one, because it's really easy to get into. So as you can see, there are parts of us that are good to save for the marital relationship. But if we view dating as someone who should benefit us in this way, a relationship that should make us happy, a person who should do this for me, then we get into consumerism. You have to meet these demands of mine. You have to do this for me. But the thing is, as Christians, we aren't meant to consume others. We are meant to serve others. Ben Stewart often references in his book 1 Timothy 5, verses 1 and 2, that say, "Do not rebuke an older man, but encourage him as you would a father, younger men as brothers, older women as mothers, younger women as sisters in all purity." So if I'm a good brother to my sister, I want the best for my sister. I will guard and protect her. I will have extremely high standards of someone that can be with her. And I, of course, would be courteous and care for her. And a dating relationship with informed by Christian values is like this. Instead of me thinking about what can this other person give me, status, popularity, their body, I instead think of what I can do and how I can serve this person as a Christian. So another way, this dating process can get murky or difficult is sexual connection. Now, this is a huge, important topic, and it's a big one, and I'm not going to be exhaustive, but I want to say a quick few things about sex and dating. When I grew up, I heard the passage a bajillion times, 1 Corinthians 6, your body is a temple of the Lord, and how I should flee from sexual immorality. And yes, this is true, and this should be taught. As a Christian, my body is not my own. The Holy Spirit is dwelling inside of me, and sexual sins can run really deep, even beyond the physical for sure. But that being said, I'd like to balance this notion with that sex was designed by God, that sex is good. It is a good thing designed by God. And God designed it for marriage as a mechanism to bond two people deeply in a multiple of ways who have committed their lives together. So if you are dating someone and you are attracted to them, don't immediately jump into the boat of shame. We jump into sin when we take this attraction into lustful thoughts. We begin, imagining things. We begin to want to consume, when we begin to have selfish thoughts. But it also, if you're dating someone and being pure is difficult for you as a couple, again, don't immediately jump into the shame boat. What you are desiring may be a good thing. This connection is a good desire. This, wanting to be one with someone is a good thing that was designed by God. And as you weigh these options and you reflect about your thoughts as you are dating someone and you have them, as a couple, you should communicate it and work diligently to hold each other accountable with these sort of things and to commit to getting to know each other deeply in other ways besides sexually as you date and evaluate if you actually like this person, if you want to be with them, and then save this aspect for the marital relationship. However, all this being said, even though sex is a good thing designed by God, it can make dating really, it can cause issues sometimes if you get into things too quickly. When we are sexually active with somebody, our bodies tell us that this is good. And, we have all these brain chemicals firing, and we feel connected to this person emotionally. There's dopamine and oxytocin at work here on big levels. So if we introduce sexual activity in this dating relationship, then this could really get in the way of us actually evaluating, is this person right for me? Do I like being with this person? Do I want to sit in a car with this person and just talk? Or am I just infatuated with this, sexuality? Is that what's pulling me towards them? As you think about this and you think about this variable of sexuality in relationships, I understand it's difficult, and I understand that this can be a really hard concept to talk about with your parents, hard concept to talk about with your person that you're dating, and it can be awkward. And all of this, just to summarize this section, when it comes down to it, we should, as Christians, trust the God who designed both marriage and sex, and trust Him to trust what he says whenever he says to process should be one way than the other. And I know it could be difficult, but when we introduce sex too early into a relationship, this really can get in the way of the process of evaluating the person we're with. The last one I want to mention now is isolation. All right, if we try to view dating as a process of evaluation, then having a dating relationship in isolation doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Proverbs 11:14 says, "Where there is no guidance, a people falls, but in an abundance of counselors there is safety." So if we don't allow ourselves to hear from others about our relationship, about the person we're with, from our parents, from our church family, from other married couples that we respect, other adults that we respect, then we may not be able to see a relationship objectively. And what is interesting as I've developed these talks about friendship, about singleness, and about dating is all of them include the importance of community. As Christians, people in Christ, people following Jesus, we were never meant to live in isolation from each other. And this, of course, includes huge decisions about who to date and who to marry, who to commit ourselves to. We, of course, should be in community and receiving feedback from each other about these things. But in today's world, dating in isolation is not only common, but it's really easy. Research shows, like I mentioned earlier, that it's much more likely now for people who are romantically involved to have met online. And I know that for many teenagers today, even if they didn't meet initially online, a large percentage of their communication, of their talking, of getting to know each other occurs online. So, it's really easy to come down on teenagers and their cell phones, and if you think about it, though, it makes a little bit of sense in their context. It used to be that kids would go to school and they'd be influenced by their peers there, and then they'd come home and be under the influence of their parents, then they'd go back to school the next day and kind of get back into those worlds. The realms allowed some separateness, at least then. But now, the social world of their peers that exist at school and other places comes home with them wherever they have cell phone service. And if they are in it, you feel this pressure of I'm missing out, I'm not communicating, I'm not talking to people, and so without bad mouthing technology, because I certainly use it a lot as well, I think we as a culture and as a church especially should evaluate how technology functions in the relationships that we and our kids have. That being said, though, whether a low percentage or a high percentage of your relationship with the person you're dating is via technology, isolating is dangerous. Isolating in a dating relationship can easily lend itself towards consumerism. I will send you one if you send me one. Why haven't you texted me today? Why haven't we FaceTime yet today? What are you doing? You owe me this kind of thoughts. Isolation also can bring about issues of safety. Many people, and not just young people, can run into online folks who we think they're one person, yet they're another one. We need to be really careful about how we communicate with other people online and what information we give them. Isolation and dating relationships can also cause lack of clarity. Many people without other objective voices, giving feedback about how this conversation went. How can you evaluate a person if you don't see how this person treats other people, how they treat other relationships that they have? So if the dating process is meant to be an evaluation period, you trying to figure out if this person is who you should be with, then having this relationship occur in isolation doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So as we close and as we wind down, I of course want to acknowledge that I didn't answer every question about dating, and I wasn't trying to, but I hope this can serve as a conversation starter that you can become interested in actually evaluating if you are in this dating phase, or if you are considering entering into this phase of life as a boyfriend, girlfriend, or as talking, or wherever you conceptualize or whatever terminology you use. We should be very aware of how we serve God and how we honor Him in this season of life. And we understand that this season of life can have huge eternal implications, and that we should allow feedback from people to come into it. We should be very aware of how we use our bodies, and we should view it, I think, as a process that we should move through, and allow the tension of not yet having given ourselves completely to this other person to drive us towards marriage and making the decision about this. And May we depend on God in these murky and gray situations for His guidance and wisdom in these complicated but yet wonderful relationships. These are good things, and I think as Christians we should continue to develop language around them to help our brothers and sisters who are walking through these things now. Thanks for tuning in. I hope to see you next time. As always, feel free to give questions or comments, and appreciate you guys. Hope you stay well.